What would it take to inspire you to look beyond yourself and help someone else in need? Tonight, we'll learn about the inspiration that some people have found in St. Vincent de Paul, so please stay with us. Thank you, and welcome. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa. Welcome to EWTN Live, our chance to bring you guests from all over the world. And tonight we'll be talking about something that is going on all over the world. There are almost 1 million volunteers around the world who serve the tangible needs of the poor every day based on the example of St. Vincent de Paul. And here to help us learn what inspires this spirit of volunteer service is the national president of the St. Vincent de Paul Society. So please welcome Mr. Joseph Flannigan. Mr. Flannigan.
Welcome. Great to be here.
Welcome back, in fact.
That's right.
It's been a few years since you've been here.
Yes, it has been, yeah.
But it's good to have you, and you're still working with the St. Vincent de Paul Society.
I am, yep.
And what I'd like us to do is go over some of what it is. And one of the first things is, why is St. Vincent de Paul so important for naming of the society?
One of the founders, the principal founder, Blessed Frederick Ozanam, working with the poor in the streets of Paris, took as his example St. Vincent de Paul, who also worked with the poor in Paris and around the world, and is a patron of charity for the church worldwide. And he was instrumental in founding the Daughters of Charity, the Ladies of Charity, and the Congregation of the Mission Fathers. And he and his partner, St. Louise de Marillac, are celebrating their 350th anniversary this year. So we have
the 350th anniversary of
the death of both St. Vincent de Paul and St. Louise de Marillac. So they've been a great inspiration for us and the ministry.
And St. Louise de Marillac, what did she do?
Well, she was really a partner with St. Vincent de Paul, working with finding the needs of the poor and going into the streets of Paris. And from that activity came about, with the leadership of both St. Vincent de Paul and her partnership, the Foundation for the Daughters of Charity and the Ladies of Charity that are part of the family today and exist worldwide. So she was also a very key player. Yeah. And we were founded in 1833 by Frederick Ozanam and his friends, who was a 20-year-old student in the Sorbonne. And he was asked, what are you doing to defend the church? The church was under attack at the time. And they were debating, and all of a sudden, one of his adversaries said, well, the church was a great institution, but what is it doing today? So he and his friends decided to go into the streets of Paris, go into the homes of the poor, and serve the poor. And that was 1833. And by 1845, the society existed here in the United States in St. Louis.
So it was one of these ideas that, caught on quickly.
Absolutely.
And began to spread to America, which at the time was just a mission country.
Right, yeah. It existed in India before it existed in the United States, so it was a powerful force, directed by the Holy Spirit.
A lot of people don't realize that the church in France has been under a series of attacks going back to the 1700s, in the French Revolution, and then at different times later on, the church was very much attacked by enemies. And they would criticize it for not doing enough to help the poor, which they said they wanted to do.
Right. And so we're part of the church. We're a Catholic lay organization that helps the poor, regardless of race or creed, but we're closely connected with the church and work, in fact, out of the parishes. Some 4,000 in the United States, and we have 700,000 members worldwide in 145 countries, all doing the same work, going into the homes of the poor and visiting them and see how we can address poverty, not only in providing food and clothing now, but finding a way to put that whole person together so the family has defeated poverty once and for all.
You know, one of the things that is part of the reality of poverty is that it doesn't have the same cause in every place. I mean, in different countries, it has different causes. What are some of the ways, therefore you have to try to address it in different ways. What are some of the ways that the St. Vincent de Paul Society tries to address poverty?
There's two aspects to it. It's both from the tradition of St. Vincent de Paul and Frederick Ozanam. It's not only addressing poverty, but also addressing the root causes of poverty and justice. Mm-hmm. So bringing justice. And what it might mean in a certain country is standing up for the rights of the poor. And I have a friend of mine who was a member of the society in a country that I'm not going to mention that was threatened with a gun and told them if they didn't renounce his faith, he'd be shot. And he said a Hail Mary, and the person put down the gun. And even under that kind of repression, they formed 25 conferences and created parishes to serve the poor. So you have that aspect of it. We also have in some countries where the poor is serving the poor. That's not uncommon. And they're going in, they don't have money to give the poor, but they're going into a city that is a garbage dump, and they're bathing children with a doctor because of you can imagine the infestation that goes on in a garbage dump.
Again, a lot of people don't realize that in certain countries, including our own, this has happened in the United States. Not so much anymore because our garbage is so mechanized. But in some countries, garbage dumps are seen as opportunities. That people go there and pick through the garbage to find what's useful and then resell it to other people.
Right, and that's one of the things that we're trying to work on, not only as the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, but in partnership with the rest of the Vincentian family in bringing about systemic change, so that we break into the cycle of poverty by the example that you just gave, finding products in the garbage dump. From that product, you then can sell it. You then can create a home. You can provide food for your family. You can, from that rise of the standard of living, you can educate your family so that dresses and provide health care. So main components that can cause poverty, and when one of those elements breaks, it can bring somebody back into poverty, can be overcome in a way of systemic change. And I think that's one of the great things about our conferences, going into the homes and being in the boundaries of a church, of a parish, so that we can look at all the elements of poverty and bring about a complete solution. We had one case where we were responding to a disaster, and they were moving people from the disaster into low-income housing that was about to be torn down. And I expected to see ramshackle housing, and it was nice garden apartments. So I said, why are they tearing this housing down? And the answer was 2 words, the Bloods and Crips. Gangs had infested the whole neighborhood, so their answer was to tear the houses down. So it's an example of...
Now, what could you do in that kind of situation? Again, so folks who may not know,
right.
Bloods and Crips are 2 very large gangs centered in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm. And around the country.
No, and they're international, actually, because they're in Honduras and other places, Guatemala. And so you have these gangs that come into a neighborhood and do a lot of businesses that are not on the up and up. So... at least allegedly. And one of the things that you do is try to help the people who are poor in that area. What can you do to help them with the situation that the houses are going to be torn down? Do you stand in front of the bulldozers? What do you do?
Yeah, one of the things that we've done in a model project that we've been a part of is called Unity Square in New Jersey, as a matter of fact, where we've taken a 40-block area and addressed all of those areas. And for crime, for instance, to establish neighborhood watch groups and bring in the mayor, and we bring in the police chief for monthly meetings. The community does, the community that's leading this, and says, they're selling drugs again on my block. And the mayor will look at the police chief, and the police chief will say, I'll take care of that. So that by advocacy, by working with other corporations, and by organizing the people to take ownership of their own situations, to form a grassroots movement, that kind of turnaround can happen.
Now, one of the things that would be a certain amount of risk is that when you engage in some of these things, it can start to become more political if you're not careful. Whereas the St. Vincent de Paul Society is rooted in parishes and in the church.
Right.
Tell us, first of all, what is the structure of the St. Vincent de Paul Society?
The basic structure is a conference. I have two roles. I'm the national president. I'm a member of my conference. And the conference exists in a parish. So that what we would form is a group of men and women to, first of all, engage in prayer. It's a ministry, and we're called to be friends with one another, and we fulfill the ministry that Christ has given us through working directly with the poor in service to the poor. So once we form that conference, we would then go and perform home visits that would identify the needs of the poor. And from those home visits, what we see is the need for a food pantry, the need for job training, and various elements that address poverty and advocacy. It also gives us a great opportunity to bring in our youth and young adults to be part of that and witness firsthand what poverty is all about.
Mm-hmm. You know, one of the things that has certainly gone on in different parts of the world is that the church has, realizes people need to work and have a decent job. Do you do things like help people find jobs?
Yes. We would do a job training. We would do interview training for people, job placements. We hire a number of people ourselves and provide that kind of training. And I think by identifying and working with the poor, we become friends of the poor. And I think half of what we bring, or more than half, to help a family is that we're there when nobody else is there. We're there working with them, so it's not a one-shot deal. You're there and you're committed to help them find a way to fulfill what God expects of them in terms of the gifts that they've been given, that are hidden by this curse of poverty.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that we've talked a lot about is the ways in which you're dealing with the immediate needs, which are hunger, need for clothing, sometimes shelter,
right.
And also for work. What about some of the spiritual components? What do you bring? Because first of all, your conferences, which are your organizational groups,
right.
They start off with prayer. Does that also feed into what you do with the poor?
Yes. The conference we've done, probably the thing I'm proudest of the society in the last 5 or 6 years, has been the spiritual formation of our own members. So we go through what it means to address poverty from a spiritual standpoint, to build our own spirituality. When we go into the homes of the poor, we don't proselytize, but we do evangelize. And
well, how do you distinguish that?
Well, what we would do is that we would go in and say, for instance, would you like to, what I always do is after a home visit, I always say to the family, would you like to pray? And if we just pray to God. If we're with a Muslim family, for instance, We would just pray to God. And through that, you get the idea of the dialogue of that faith is important to them. And they've always said, yes, we'd love to pray with you. And we look for opportunities, too, if they're either to bring them back to their church or to bring them into our church, to have opportunities, connections with the RCIA program, for instance, if they've only been baptized but not have received the other sacraments.
Okay. So there's this a variety of doing what we know as the corporal works of mercy, as well as the spiritual works of mercy. Both of these are going on.
Yeah, right, absolutely.
Showing mercy to the needs of the body,
right,
but also showing mercy to the needs of the soul.
Right, and I think it's very important, unless you establish that bond and have God present with what we're doing, it's very difficult for that person to recognize their own dignity and take charge of their lives. We're not there to run their lives. We're there to help them find God and find their path that God has intended to them, and empower them.
Yeah. See, that's one of the things that, in a certain sense, the whole nation needs. I mean, we're in a struggle about, with some forces in society trying to keep God out of society as much as possible, right, and also keeping human dignity out. I mean, right now, the present administration is trying to make sure that they can do stem cell research from small babies. So and it destroys the life and the dignity of human beings. So keeping God out also destroys dignity on the society level. So bringing it into the poor is obviously a very important area of life. Right,
and I think our Voice of the Poor committee that addresses all the issues that affect the poor from a policy standpoint. We're neither Democrats or Republicans, but we're there to advocate for the issues that affect the poor, right, at the national and the local level.
Yeah.
And so that support and resources helps our members advocate for the poor when bills come up in Congress or at the state level. So we have what we call a CapWiz, which is a legislative network that we have that sends letters to our congressmen and calls. We make calls when those issues that affect the poor come up. And we work with the U.S. Conference of Bishops and Catholic Charities USA on that also.
One of the other very big issues that causes poverty, certainly in our United States, but it's also in other countries, is the breakdown of family. Single moms, because it's usually moms, sometimes single dads, but usually it's single moms. And they and their children are the poorest people in the country. Does the St. Vincent de Paul Society also work on trying to restore family as a way to end the poverty?
Right. I think that by being engaged in the community, we can identify, we look for, in the worst case scenarios where the father, for instance, more typical case we say, has left the family.
Right. Or never moved in.
Or never moved in. We would look to try to find ways to bring him back into the family environment. Invite him in to say, hey, so here's a situation, how can you help? On another level, by getting in early and meeting with the families, where someone's having a $7 an hour job because they can't get out to a warehouse, they have no transportation to get there, to get a $16 or $17 an hour job, we'll find ways to get that transportation so that we're having the father become a wage earner and contribute to the stability of the family. We try to find the poor not only in the homes, but where they are. Sometimes it's in the woods. Alcohol and drugs are a serious part of the separation of a family. Sometimes it's in the prison, or they've come to our homeless shelter. So we'll try to work with them to restore the family. And I know a guy that I worked with helped us had an alcohol problem, helped us in our food pantry, and finally we reunited him with his family in Pennsylvania, and he went back with the family. But it took a long time, and it was really very satisfying.
Yeah. See, that's one of the areas where, again, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And this is a lay group primarily that is doing this kind of work to help on this variety of levels of dealing with the poor.
Right.
Now, one of the realities I know we're dealing with here at EWTN and other groups around the country, every group I know of around the country that is a charitable group, there's an economic downturn that's very serious. We have 9.5% of people out of work, and probably a higher percent because some people just have given up even trying anymore. But these are the ones on the official roll at 9.5% and might be closer to 15%.
Sure.
How do you get funding? Is that a problem right now to get funding to help the poor? Because the poor have expanded through the increase of unemployment.
Right. We're all our conferences are really stretched, and we do our fundraising through the parishes. We have some grants, but primarily it's the society raising money through the good auspices of other Catholics and through things that we're doing at the end of this month, September 26th and 27th, with the National Walk for the Poor that will raise, we expect, $1.2 million or more. That's what it did last year, that we'll be able to send directly into conferences to help the poor. So the conferences have a great demand, and we have a new poor that we're seeing, people that have been out of work for the first time. Yes. So that's
many of them are highly educated and are accustomed to being middle class.
That's right. Yeah.
And is there any way to help them not lose their homes and things like that, or
I
is
think
that beyond?
That's the important thing. One of the things that we do, since we're the case managers, if you will, I think we're in a good position to look at the other resources, to use our resources. Such as what the local programs that are available and the national programs, to say, have you tried this? For instance, what I would do is to take the person I'm working with down to social services, so we go through all the programs with them together, and to make sure that we're not spending our dollars where a federal program is available for them. For them to take, too. Sure. And I think one of the things is to make it easier for the poor to access what the government can provide. For instance, food stamps. It wasn't up until recently that they provided debit cards that people would have to go here to get food stamps, another place to get nourishment for their young children. So all of this is transportation, takes time. And by consolidating those services and thinking from the eyes of what the poor person has to go through, that's another area I think that we can bring to the table to streamline the processes and provide the poor with the services they're entitled to.
I hear some commentators say, well, we should stop some of the federal help to the unemployed because they're just staying unemployed because they don't even want to go back to work. But does that sound like the real situation?
No, the people that we see want to work, and they want to provide a productive job, and so we're there to try to find that. A lot of that has to do with the economic dislocation, so job retraining is a very important aspect for that, and being able to access where the jobs are available and is very important. It's not, we don't see people who want to be living off the dole. Everybody wants to work and be a productive member of society and provide for their families.
Sure. That's my read of things too. Right. I hear this other stuff on TV. It's not this channel, other channels. But it doesn't ring true. It doesn't sound like that's the way it really is.
Yeah. And what happens in a difficult economic situation, and for the poor in general, is one thing goes wrong, everything can collapse. For instance, if there's someone sick in the family and you lose a wage earner, you can lose your mortgage.
Sure.
So all of a sudden you're on the street.
Right.
So that's a very fine line between being successful and and becoming destitute.
It sounds as if the St. Vincent de Paul Society conferences are places that are going to help nurture the spiritual life of the members,
Right.
but also get them to help nurture the family life and social and economic life of other people. Would that be a fair analysis?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
How hard is it to join the St. Vincent de Paul Society?
Well, we really need, first of all, we need prayers, and it's very easy to join. You become a member, can come in and work. We have, for instance, in our conference, some young mothers who are raising their children, and they can't go out on cases on a regular basis. They're raising their children. So they go once a month, prepare meals, and deliver it to the homeless shelter and serve those meals. And they bring their children with them.
Sure.
So as their lifestyle changes, then they become full members of the society and go out on cases. But they're all part of our prayer life and doing the various functions that are important to us to keep the society going.
See, that's one of the things that I think is also very important, is that it's not just a group of old people who are going out to help the poor. It should be the whole family.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The whole family being involved.
That's right. And we had, I remember sitting in one meeting where we were doing training on how to do a case interview. And this woman in her 40s was saying, can I really ask that kind of a question? And she was being instructed by a 17-year-old who went out of cases. And he was saying, yes, you can. Here's why you do it. I just kept looking, It's amazing what our young people are doing, and we're very proud of our youth and young adult groups in the society. And because they have that great connection with the children and the family, which is another important aspect of keeping the families together.
Yeah. And this is the kind of work that folks who are involved in scouting and other groups can use their skills to bring to this to help out a lot of folks.
Sure, right. Yeah.
Well, look, we need to take a break.
Okay.
We're going to come back in a couple of minutes, but we want to get some of your comments and some of your questions. So please stay with us. Thank you and welcome back. I want to give you a website that if you're interested in contacting the St. Vincent de Paul Society, you can go to www.svdpusa.org. Let me go through that. And it stands for St. Vincent de Paul USA.org. So it's svdpusa.org. And you can find out a lot more about the St. Vincent de Paul Society at their website. Also, we have a really nice audience, a group of folks who come from Kentucky, a group of folks from New York, and a few individuals scattered around. And we'd love to have you come. If you come as a group, or you come with your family, or come as an individual, you are more than welcome. We just recommend that you contact our pilgrimage department at 205-271-2966. That's 205-271-2966. Or go to our website, www.EWTN.com. And they'll get you all kind of information about where you can stay, scheduling, for the programs, for the masses, for tours of the network, and also getting up to Hansville, I can do all that, and all the other great stuff you get to do right here in Irondale, Alabama. So please feel free to come down. We look forward to having you come. In fact, this makes it a lot more fun for me. Are you ready for some questions?
Yes, certainly am.
Well, let's giddy up. We have a caller, first of all. We have William on the line. Hello, William.
Yes, good evening, Padre Pacwa and Mr. Flannigan. Thanks for having me. I'm going to condense this because it's a long story, but my family, my wife and I firsthand were helped very graciously through our church in Belleville, Michigan by the Society. I lost my home in June. I was an aviation mechanic over in Italy in 2008, got laid off, went through my 92 weeks of unemployment, went to social services, received food stamps, and then naturally not having any sort of income, the St. Vincent de Paul Society came to our aid, particularly when we realized we had to move out of our home. When I was in the process of packing, our priest visited us from time to time. My wife stayed with my daughter in North Carolina. I worked on the oil spill for 3 weeks and lost my job there, and then subsequently now I've come back to Michigan. I put it all behind me, but I want to thank Mr. Flannigan because I had no one to help me during this very dreadful period that was very trying on my mind. My spirits and religion held me together. I'm a Catholic boy from Philly, schooled by Sisters of St. Joseph, bless their hearts. And I just want to thank the St. Vincent de Paul Society very much. I could go on, but try not to forget the things that I didn't have space to put in storage, I relinquished over to the St. Vincent de Paul Society so they can give people that are in need furniture and whatnot. So thank you very much. God bless you, Padre Pacwa and Mr. Flannigan. It's nice to see that there's a big Irishman in charge of a very, very good society. We really appreciate it, and thank you.
But that's an example of someone who's really, experienced, the full impact of this economy and its negative impact. And Michigan is one of the most difficult states in the union. I think it's got the highest unemployment. But even in his situation, he was able to say, look, I'm going to lose this stuff anyway. Might as well give it and help other poor people. So this is an example of what you meant by the poor helping the poor.
Right, and I think it's also important that we work under the principle of subsidiarity as an inverse triangle where we're our people.
What does that mean, subsidiarity?
In other words, my job is I'm at the bottom of the triangle. I'm there to support everyone that is out meeting the poor so that we are there to help our members serve the poor. And I think this is a good example of the society nationally trying to support what's going on in the 4,000 conferences we have around the country. And I would encourage you, that's a great story. And many of our people that have experienced that, when their life situation changes and they have the time to come back, help other poor, become a conference member, and telling that story to another poor person who is going through the same thing can make all the difference in the world.
Sure.
Because I've been there.
Exactly.
They can say, I've been there, and here's how I handled it.
Yeah, it's very common that people who are in the same problem appreciate somebody who understands it from the inside.
Right.
Yeah, great. We have a question from our studio. Sir, where are you from?
Living in Hansville right now.
Great.
Originally from New York.
Great.
Yes.
And good to have you here. What is your question?
Well, my question is, you spoke on how you provide food and jobs for those in need. But what if they're having medical issues? How do you provide medical assistance for them if you do that?
Well, one of the things we do is to make sure that everybody can get the medical attention that they're entitled to through the government services and like prescriptions. And secondly, we have clinics. We have volunteer doctors and pharmacists who can come in, devote their time and provide medical help in that way also. Yeah. And we've got a strong association with Ascension Health, which is Daughters of Charity, and Catholic Health Association. So we work on some of the advocacy issues with them also.
Yeah, that's one of the things that is very important in such a group, is that people come to it with their own skill sets. You know, they if they're a nurse, a doctor, a dentist, there's a lot that you can do.
Exactly, right.
The only thing that I know of from some doctors and dentists is that sometimes they're a little nervous because they're afraid they might get sued. Sometimes they prefer to go to the third world because they can help out and not worry about lawyers, suing them. They just do their work as doctors. Do you have that kind of a problem?
Yeah, well, we really haven't. We've got some good people who understand insurance and make sure that our people that are volunteering, helping us, are appropriately insured for our workers that are helping the poor.
Right. I mean, you don't want a doctor volunteer to be careless, but you also don't want him to be so afraid that he can't really help anybody.
Exactly, yeah.
We have another caller, Mike on the line. Hello, Mike.
Hello, Father Mitch, and hello, Mr. Flannigan.
Where are you from, Mike?
Thanks, St. Vincent de Paul. My question is, has St. Vincent de Paul ever considered a national school similar to a college for job training, how to fill out resumes, ways to apply for jobs?
We don't have a national school for doing that, but what we do have is that we have our councils, which are really at the diocesan level. They support our conferences, and we would recruit people who are experts in that and provide those services maybe at a central level for our conferences to send people to. And that is one of our special works. I think probably everyone's heard of our stores, but the other services we provide that we call special works are not only healthcare, but educational opportunities and job training and helping to fill out resumes, which is a big part of that, and doing interview skills.
Yeah, because that's another thing, too. A lot of people don't know how to do an interview to sell themselves,
sure,
in a way that they can get a good job.
Right, yep.
How are you? Fine.
Okay.
No, you got to say,
right. Yeah.
I'm here to get a job, and I want to work because I can work hard. You have to tell them how to
right.
communicate.
And I think that's the next level that we see in the society, because we go into the homes and see the problems firsthand. That feeds back to say, well, we need a dental clinic, or something like that, or job training. Because those kinds of things can then be done at the next support level, which is at the diocesan level, that can provide more professional programs in terms of training and providing the appropriate skills.
Okay. All right. Let's go to another question from our studio audience. Sir, where are you from?
Me, I'm from New York.
Great. Good to have you here. And what is your question?
Good to be here. My question is, because you touched on the gang problem and also the single-parent problem, and most of the gang members came from single-parent homes, and because that was like an attractive lifestyle for them, like how do you work on like keeping them away from that? And like, do you have like sports programs or anything while the mother's at work and they're alone? Is there anything you guys do to kind of nip the problem in the bud?
Yeah, there was a dramatic story when we had our meeting last year in Cincinnati. We had the coroner there, and I think it was 80% of the people that were murdered in Cincinnati had less than a fourth grade education. And what he saw is that there was nobody there to take care of the child. When he went to school, the schools were in difficult shape. There was nobody to give attention. And many of these children, the first person that they saw that cared about them was a gang. So they went into the gangs, and then that's where it fell apart. So what we're doing around the country is trying to interact, and we need to do, as a nation, a better job of connecting what we do in the social service arena with the educational arena to make sure that we've got that connection. And so that we are working with programs, with camps, and with the children of families around the country.
You know, we said earlier how one of the causes of poverty is the single-parent home. And it's, again, usually the father who's gone. In many ways, the gangs try to take the role of the father.
Right.
And they don't do a very good job. You know, they don't understand what's for the benefit of the kid. They think more the benefit of the gang. So having an alternative that focuses on what's of benefit to the child, that's very key.
Right.
Yeah. We have another question from our studio audience. Sir, where are you from?
I'm from Port Jefferson, New York.
Great.
My question is, since the economy is in the state that it is right now, people losing their jobs here and there and around the world, I was just wondering, how large is your organization?
In the United States, we have 146,000 members, and we're in 4,000 parishes around the country. So we've got a significant presence nationally. 4,000
parishes out of about how many parishes in the country?
25,000.
Yeah, that's what I think. So
yeah, it's about 25%.
Yeah.
So that's another area that we'd like to expand in, to create where those parishes where we don't exist, to have people say, yeah, why don't you come in and we'll provide the training and work with the pastor to get a conference going.
Yeah. So people who are interested in doing some of this may also need to help start a conference in their own parish, so that this is a parish-based lay apostolate.
Right, yeah. And the other predicament is, as parishes are consolidating, that we maintain our presence there. Even if the parish closes, we need to find ways not to abandon that neighborhood.
Yeah. All right, let's get another question from our studio audience. Sir, where are you from?
Clearwater, Florida.
Great. And what's your question?
Well, I was interested in maybe an update on Haiti. Haiti was or is still the poorest country in the Caribbean. And after the earthquake, it's got to be tough.
Yeah, we had 5 of our members there. Our conferences were killed in the earthquake. And what we've been asked by the International Society to be the point organization, the United States Council, in terms of the response for Haiti. Now, we are not a first responder organization. We go in for the long term. We're still involved with Katrina, the residues of Katrina, believe it or not. But what we're doing in Haiti is working with the Vincent family on a project that started before the earthquake, and that is called Zafen, zafen.org. It's Z-A-F-E-N. It means it's our business in Creole. And what it is microfinancing. So there's so much going on relief-wise, we've decided that this is an area where we can create jobs, where somebody can start a flower shop or a dress shop. We would provide them a loan. They would get that business started and then repay. The concept of microfinancing is once they started up, they would repay that and we'd start another project. So we're working with the Vincent family and with the society internationally to support that type of relief in Haiti. And we have a person on the ground right now from the United States that's working the logistics of that. So we're ready to go.
Yeah, because in Haiti, of course, the first and immediate need was just to get food, shelter, clothing after this catastrophe. But there's going to be a need to rebuild society, and that's a tough society to rebuild because it was so poor to begin with. As that gentleman said, it's not just the poorest in the Caribbean, it's the poorest in the hemisphere.
Right, yeah.
So this is going to be one of the ways in which you try to rebuild.
The other thing is working with the Vincent family to provide, one of the things we can do through Zafen is, and the beauty of Zafen is I as an individual can educate one child through the schools that are being run now by the Daughters of Charity. So there are lots of different ways to help turn around poverty, not just by providing food, but by providing a job, for instance, where they can support their family through creating their own businesses, through education of the children, through help in the area of health care, for example.
You know, and it's when you said you can support it, you can educate a child. What do you mean by you can educate a child?
In other words,
do you go there and teach?
No, the teachers are there. They're there through the schools of the Daughters of Charity, and there may be more that are required, certainly more teachers. But what we can do is I, as an individual, or my conference, can send money through the Zaffin Project for to educate a child for a year.
Pay for the tuition.
Pay for the tuition, right.
Right, and books and all those fees. Okay. Yeah, so are things starting to look up in Haiti? Do you know how, or how bad is it?
I think it's dangerous. It's still pretty bad. We have a terrific Vincentian who is living in Haiti, and he's our international coordinator. So he's got his fingers on the pulse there. He's a great guy to have there, but it's going to be a very long haul. And unfortunately, instead of having heavy equipment in to do some of the work that has to be done to clear out get major things rebuilt, they're doing with picks and shovels for $1 a day. So that's smacks to me of it's the same old way. So that's why I'm very positive about the idea of creating microfinancing businesses through the Zaffin Project, and also doing things that can make a real difference, like education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard to imagine, but because there's so many people out of work and they don't have their own businesses, right. And sometimes they didn't have businesses before the earthquake. Yeah. So $1 a day sounds acceptable.
Yeah, right.
Even though it could be done a lot better.
Right.
Well, let's get another question from our studio audience. Ma'am, where are you from?
Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah.
And what is your question?
My question is, how old are your youngest volunteers, and how young would you like them to be?
We have fourth graders. We have conferences in grammar schools. So the young people in the society, we can accommodate in any variety. And those conferences would do works. They go in and help serve food. They'd write letters to other children. And as they grow older, they can do more. And they have mentors at the high school, go on projects.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing how much a young person can actually accomplish. And it's not just the task that gets done, but the young person also learns a lot, probably as much, if not more, than what they gave.
Yeah, right.
By getting out there and doing stuff.
Right, yeah.
What are some of the other things going on? Especially now with, the people may not have as many funds to give, and people are afraid, given the economy. But do you find that people have more time to donate instead of money? Is that going on?
Yes, we're seeing that with we have an increase in our volunteers, and we just opened a food pantry in a new food pantry in New Jersey, in Perth Amboy, and that had a lot of volunteers there, and having the people come in to do that and to help building. Help restore a house, help elderly people create platforms so they can get around. So we're getting more volunteers. That's a good part of that. But however, the pressure's on. So that's one side of people. You say, I've got some time, but another says, boy, I can't. The person that was helping you and their life is in flux now because they lost their job, may not be able to help you. So there's a lot of turmoil going on within the labor force and within the communities.
Sure.
From that standpoint.
Now, one of the other things too, do you work with other organizations? For instance, you mentioned rehabbing houses. There are groups like Habitat for Humanity. Do you cooperate with them and work with them?
Sure. What we try to do is not to duplicate efforts, but to make those kinds of contacts so that we can identify opportunities for helping the poor in a specific area where somebody else has the expertise. We were working with other groups, such as the Lutherans, for instance, in the aftermath of the hurricanes, and still are. So that
you may be doing that pretty soon again if that hurricane keeps coming. We have to keep a close watch on that hurricane along the East Coast.
Yeah. And, of course, the U.S. Conference of Bishops and Catholic Charities USA, a partnership there, because many of the Catholic Charities organizations in the diocese are a great complement to us, because we'll be involved in a case and we'll say, there's something missing here psychologically that we need some help on. So having that contact with Catholic Charities or contacts that they may have can get professional help when they need it, because it might be a psychological problem that is the real barrier to making progress.
You know, because the problem of poverty is not a doctrinal issue. It sounds to me as if you've also been able to make very concrete efforts with non-Catholic groups, and so that the doctrines don't get in the way, but this becomes a way for another level of dialogue with other religions. Exactly.
I think one of the things that my experience has been is that when you're talking about issues of poverty, doctrine is not there. That we've had great working relationship with people of all faiths in addressing those areas. And one of the things that we're also trying to do is to reach out to people of all cultures in the United States, so that we've got a special effort to support that in terms of being able to bring in serve people from all different cultures, immigrant establishments, for instance, and also bring them into the organization.
Yeah, that's one of the things that there's some forces within the country that would tend to have us pull apart and say, well, my ethnic group or my cultural group is more important than being an American. Whereas when you're helping people, you can't think that way. You say, look, who's in need here? That's the bottom line issue.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, so. Yep. Now, there's going to be one of the things coming up. You mentioned, but I'd like you to talk a little bit more about this. You've got a Friends of the Poor walk. Where is that held?
Well, it's going to be held around the country. So that
it's a long walk.
That's right. You could take a break. But it's going to be around the country, in our conferences. And it's a national walk on the 26th of September. And you can go out, support your conference. You can sign up online through our website, thefriendsofthepoor.org, and sponsor a walk, or just make a contribution. And all of those monies, first year we did it, we raised $850,000. All of went to our conferences in the parishes to help the poor. Last year was almost $1.3 million, and we're hoping for more this year. So it's a great opportunity to have a national program that helps directly serve the poor.
And, $1.3 million sounds like a lot of money, but it's not.
No.
When you're talking about, government deficits at $3 trillion, they just had $2 trillion this year for a deficit. And that's 1,000 billions. And a billion is 1,000 millions. I mean, this is a drop in the bucket. Yeah. Compared to all the money that's sort of floating around out there.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
So at any rate, there is a website that people can go to.
They can either go to our
it's called www.svdp. Again, stands for St. Vincent de Paul. SVDP friendsofthepoorwalk.org. That's one word,
Right.
SVDP, friendsofthepoorwalk.org. Well, you know, we've run out of time. I want to thank you for coming over here to tell us about this. And I want to encourage you to join some of these conferences, to build up your spiritual life, to find other people to pray with and grow in your own spiritual walk, but also to be able to help the poor. And in doing this, I want to bless you with a relic of St. Vincent de Paul. May God bless you, and by the intercession of St. Vincent, lead you to a greater love of the poor. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. And again, I want to remind you that this network is brought to you by you. And we're still down ourselves. You know, we need help as well. So please keep us in between your gas bill and your electric bill and your cable bill, and we'll be able to pay all of our bills. God bless you, and thank you so much.